welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about today's conversation because it's with Becca Piastrelli, who she does many things. She also has a podcast. She's a book author. She's a mom. She lives also in upstate New York on a farm with her family. And she talks about topics that, if you know anything about me, are core components of who I am and what I do and what I believe and am so passionate about, such as belonging and community, connection, ritual, seasonal living, intention. This conversation is for everyone, whether you think you fit into the stereotypical bucket of what those things mean to you or not. We talk a lot about the importance of living in these ways and incorporating this type of way of being into our life, and how to do it no matter who you are or how you label yourself. We both believe that no matter what, you are meant to have deep connections. Intentional living is a birthright, and rituals are a way to embody all of that in our life that we all can do here and now. I really hope you listen to this full conversation. I'm so excited to share it. And thank you all so much for being here. Becca, I've been so looking forward to this. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Fellow upstate New York gal.
I want to hop right into the first question that I always start with, which is, what is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
Oh, what a juicy question. Well, it depends how you know me. So, what I've had this experience of, before we hit record, we were talking about wanting more in-person experiences as people who have like online brands and do work with people probably all over the world. I think if you know me from like social media or, internet face, I think a lot of the work I do is deep, like I'm talking about belonging to the earth and innate belonging. And I'm talking about ritual, and I'm talking about the life, death, rebirth cycle. I'm talking about seasonal living. And these have an energy of seriousness, like really, and it is deeply serious to me. But I'm actually like a modern day gal. Yes, I live on a farm and I work with the plants and the animals, and I aspire to this way of life that's more ancestrally honoring. And I love reality TV and I love memes, and I am a mom of a 4-year-old. There's so much about me that I wonder. I've been trying to reveal it more, but then I was like, forget social media anyways. But I think a lot of people sort of see people on the internet and just take them at one note. And that's because we only reveal certain notes of ourselves. But I like to be upfront now that like I'm a complex modern millennial gal who is talking about these deep topics and also holding what it is to be a modern woman too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that because it is so hard to show all of us online. And I have noticed myself also paying attention to what people make assumptions from about me through my work, and being like, where do I want to fill in the blanks? And also like, where is it fine that they don't know these
Yeah.
parts of me?
Yeah. I had like some criticism come my way, which so many of us do on the internet. And what it did is, at first it hurt, and then I realized it broke in a beautiful way. It set me free from this unconscious contract I had with followers about who I was supposed to be to them and what I needed to be for them to follow me. And I know that anyone can relate to that. But yeah, I don't think we have any responsibility to reveal all of who we are to anyone. Like that's a gift. And what I like to remind people of is I'm a whole human. Please don't pedestalize me in any way. I'm complex. I have thin skin. My feelings get hurt. I make mistakes, and you are too. I feel like we're sort of emerging from this cultural, I don't know, personal brand sort of, in the 2010s, expectation, influencer, cancel culture, confluence of like who we present ourselves to be. And what I'm seeing, one of which people like divesting from sharing it all, but to feeling the need to sort of like defend who they are or reveal all of it. It's all just a game. And any transmission we give to the world is a spell, and it's intentional. And don't be on the computer and your phone so much. Those are
Mm.
my thoughts on that.
I agree with all of it. It
Yeah.
makes me it makes me think about this article I was given like my first day of college, and I still remember it to this day. I feel like it was one of the most impactful moments of my college career. And we read about the difference between fitting in versus belonging.
Yeah.
And it just shifted something in me. And I feel like so many people are trying to fit in and trying to be everyone's cup of tea or, appease everyone. And then we don't really feel like we belong anywhere. I know that
Yeah.
so much of your work is talking about belonging. I'm curious what that word means to you.
Oh, I say it's like an onion I'll be peeling for the rest of my life. It's a deep and powerful word that is a mystery to me. I find when I talk about it, everyone's, latches onto it in a way that is meaningful for their life story. I think fitting in versus belonging is a really important topic for those of us who struggle to feel like we can be our authentic selves in friendship or community, have to look at. And I always try to bring historical and scientific context to why we might be feeling these feelings, because I think a lot of times we pathologize ourselves as being wrong or bad or not doing good enough. That's wellness culture being like, just improve yourself. And while there can be that part of it, our healing journey, I like to talk about mimic neurons or mirror neurons. I was just actually talking to my contractor who's building our attic right now, and he was talking about how his teenage son just does what his friends do and it drives him crazy. And I was like, well, there's something called mimic neurons. It's why social media is really dangerous before you become an adult, because it's literally a survival instinct in
Mm.
an undeveloped brain and also developed brain. But let's just talk about teenagers for a second, where like I was like, your son is doing a very natural thing, which is like going along with the crowd so that he is safe. Which is why we as caregivers and parents really, I believe, need to be super boundaried and also partner with our children around why you can't do that thing. Because it's not that I don't trust you, it's that your brain isn't ready for that. But we grow up with that. So those mimic neurons are still available to us, but we can work with our capacity and learn from our experiences and have this scientific context to know, when am I just in a maybe a trauma response or survival instinct to want to fit in, which is such a natural human thing to do. I find it comes up for me with the cool moms at preschool drop off, where I'm like, should I dress more like them? Should I talk like them? Like, they all went to art school in New York City, but I'm from California. Like, should I talk? Should I learn? Should I be Googling art so I can talk? Like, it's, I'm just honest. That's what I'm going through. And then I realized actually, like, an evolved experience of community and friendship is just a garden thrives with diversity. Monoculture kills the soil. A diverse garden actually nourishes the soil. So I'm going to be my best Becca. I'm going to be a beacon of light. I'm going to be myself. And maybe at first they're like, who's that? Who's that girl from California?
Mhm.
Not wearing the same, Blundstones or whatever it is. But I actually got the same Blundstones because they're a really great shoe.
They're the
But
best shoes out
they're
there.
the only shoe. Yeah, yeah. I get it. But you know what I mean? And it takes a matured response of your urges to be like, oh, I'm going to reveal who I truly am, be patient, work on my own tending and remembering my own innate lovability, and be that beacon of my bestness, right? So that eventually the garden has a new flower and that soil is really nourished by it. I love that metaphor for so many things because I think it can help the parts of us that feel different remember that it is nourishing in that way.
Yeah. It takes so much intention and presence to catch ourselves in those moments because if we're just on autopilot, we can fall into those automatic responses. Often, our first response around something is our conditioning and our reactions. And then our second response is who we truly are at our core. And I think it takes presence to be able to get to that second layer
Yeah.
and to then follow through on that takes confidence. And it can be really challenging because we all do want to fit in. We all want
Yes.
to be accepted and loved and part of the group. So how has that process looked for you since you've moved upstate and moved from California? Because it's been how long have you lived here for?
Yeah, so the very quick and dirty story is I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area of California in like suburban mom life for the last 20 years. Well, I've been a mom for the last four, and then deeply felt a call eastward. Also, much of California was burning in wildfires, and I just felt a call to return to the East Coast where my family's from. So we bought a farm in upstate New York, a place I had no idea about. And we just kept being like, we shouldn't do this. Why are we doing this? But it was like, that feeling when you feel so compelled by something deeper. I almost felt like an invisible hand was pulling me eastward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to this day, even Tim, my partner, will be like, what happened? And we just be like, the divine is what happened. Trust,
Mm-hmm.
trust, trust. So we landed here September 2023. So we have been here like almost a year and a half. And it's been intense. I just started a Substack about my farming adventures called Root Shock. And that's a botanical term for what happens when you uproot a plant and then you attempt to move it to another soil location. You have to acknowledge that the root system is in a shock and you need to tend to it as such and gently nurture it into its new home. And I'm like, that is exactly what happened to me. I've never been a nomadic human. I've been a very rooted in place, connected to the land, the people, creature comforts. I don't really like to be in movement kind of person. So it was very big on my system. And I had a really vibrant community out in California and with parents, with my witchy coven folks. My partner had it. We had a whole good thing. And it was enough for me to be like, I'm ready to start again.
Wow.
I trust myself, like the confidence you talked about. Like, I have confidence that I can build community again. And in fact, I'd like to test that in myself. It's just sort of like the thing we all have that thing, that life's where it's like my Chiron in astrology, my life's purpose has
Mm-hmm.
to do with that. So we got here and I came in really confident and it didn't go so great. I think I was a little arrogant at times. I was really insecure at times. I definitely tried to fit in. And I have so much love for myself. There's no judgment or shame. It's very normal. And man, those early people who just said, come on in, I'll introduce you to people. God, they're just angels in my life. And I got really strategic about who I'm going to focus my energy on while also tending to my grieving child who just left her home and my grieving body that's in East Coast winter for the first time in 20 years. There was so much to tend to. So I've just told myself, give it time, give it time. And I accepted and befriended loneliness who came knocking again. I just said, okay, this is a lonely holiday season. Okay. It's going to be different next year. Okay. What is it fueling me with? What is it informing me with? And that's the honest truth. It's been hard, but here I am a year and a half later, and I feel abundant in
Mm-hmm.
connection and excited to keep going.
I really want to know about how you started to cultivate those connections and started to grow that abundance because I am someone who I've traveled around a lot. I've lived in many different places but I grew up in New York, not upstate, but not the city either. I won't go into my whole story, but coming back to New York, closer to family was really hard for me. It was something
Yeah.
I swore I would never, ever, ever do. But I also got that pull of I need to be here.
Mhm.
and I couldn't ignore it. And when I got here, I was like, no, I want to put down roots here. I really want to be here. I want to build community here. I want to build connection here. And that is not something I'm used to in a more permanent sense. And so it's felt really scary and
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And yeah, it's not easy. And it takes time to meet people and it takes time to find the place where you feel like you belong. As someone who bases so much of your work off of circling and teaching about all of this, I would love to know more about how that process has looked for you.
Hmm. Yeah. So I actually worked with a practitioner on this. Her name is Sarah Wildman. Her business is called Our Common. She's out of Canada, and I really want to highlight her as being supportive to me because when I'm super regulated, I can navigate it, but I knew and was pretty dysregulated when I got here for many reasons. New topography, my child wasn't sleeping well. I had to try to figure out where the best groceries were and where the gas station, there was just so much triage and needing to figure out that I couldn't be like, how do I make friends sustainably? So I worked with Sarah. She works with people who are thinking about community creation. She works with people who do land-based community projects. And she helped my husband Tim and I really come down to like our core values and what sort of our roles were. So community is a core value of mine, and it was one of my roles. Whereas Tim is like an infrastructure guy. So he was like, I'm going to figure out the sheep, or like, I'm going to figure out the fence. And I'm like, I'm going to find us friends. And then she just would remind, it was like a way to remap to my North Star when I felt lonely, was to be like, okay, that's my value. And then what is a good strategy? So what I focused on was location. So who is near me, physically near me, where spontaneous or quick get-togethers, like low lift get-togethers, because that's the whole thing about adult friendship is time, time, time. There's not enough time. We'll text and we'll ghost each other and we'll, reschedule last minute. And I want to start having consistent connection, even if it's 5 minutes at the coffee shop of, hi, how are you? So I focused on people who lived in my close proximity. There's one woman up the street. She has a daughter, my daughter's age. I was like, she's one, you know?
Found
And
her.
like, yeah, did a values check, right? And then there's another one 5 minutes down the road. And she was the one who was like, let me introduce you to everyone I know. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, there's another woman down the street. Okay, I'm going to focus on these three women. And I didn't go hard and freak them out, but I just knew that when I texted them, I was not doing anything else. And I was trying to transmit just like kind of chill, focused intention, which is like, I am interested in being friends with you. That was basically the energy. And also, no problem if you can't hang out this week, but I really like you. And, flattery helps all of us.
Mhm.
And here's why I think we have similar interests. We live near each other. I'm so excited for our kids to hang out. I'll make waffles on Sunday. Just bring your kid over for before nap time, 1 hour. Things like that. People I would run into at the coffee shop. And if I would run into them, I would make sure, even if I'm like in my head, I got to run home, I have a call, I have a podcast interview, I got an email, I'd just be like, okay, for 2 minutes, I'm going to look in their eyes and be like, how are you? And really answer or really listen to what their answer was. Like, how are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm good. What is that? Not real. How are
Mhm.
you? Oh, empathetic, compassionate response.
Yeah.
Maybe they ask me how I am, maybe not, but I know what my intention is to create connection. So, and one of those women, I knew her birthday was today because I put it in my calendar. So I had no time, but I texted her. I was like, happy birthday, quick birthday hug and the cortado at the coffee shop. She's like, I'm here. I was like, great, I'll stop by. Gave her a hug, said happy birthday, grabbed myself a nice coffee and went on my way. That's a titration model, right? Of little deposits in the bank. It's expanding everyone's capacity instead of me going whole hog. Hi, let's be friends, thirsty and desperate. And if I got back from them like, no, I'd be like, all right, okay, because I know my innate lovability. I worked on
Mhm.
that for a long time. Like, okay. But I'm 3 for 3 with these gals, and it's been great because the conversations we have are real and vulnerable and compassionate, and we can say we have bad days. And that's what I want. I want real. So that's the top tips I would give.
No, that's so helpful. I'm going to apply all of those
Good.
to my life. Thank you. And it really, and this is something I've already started infusing in my life, but we can't be afraid of going first, of being the one to put
Oh,
ourselves
yeah.
out there and say, I like you, I want to hang out with you, or complimenting someone, or just being brave and courageous. And again, confident enough in ourselves that if someone is like not into it, it's okay. And we move
Well,
on.
good thing you know that. So you're not investing your time in someone who's not, like, hello, thank you.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly. Exactly. Because like you, I want the real, deep, authentic connections and conversations. And so I want someone to tell me how they feel.
Yeah. And first of all, I love what you said about we can't be afraid to go first. That's like my whole philosophy on community is if you want it bad enough, that means you were ordained to create it.
Mm,
Sorry,
mm,
that's hard and annoying sometimes. But we all just can't land in the magical community coven that embraces you and says, just walk on in. I wish. That's really hard. And if they say no, it's okay to be bummed. It's okay to feel triggered. I just wrote an email out to my email list that was called The Gift of Being Uninvited. I love this philosophy from Priya Parker, who wrote The Art of Gathering, called Generous Exclusion, about how it's a gift to yourself and the people who are coming to your gathering to not invite everyone. Well, for those of us who have a real being left out trigger, that's really hard to be excluded or to have someone say, no, I'm not interested in a friendship with you. Like, oh yeah, ouch. And so feel that ouch, cry that ouch, journal that ouch. Don't be afraid of that grief. And then don't you want to find the people who want you in there? Don't you want to be the person inviting people in? It's all fuel. But yeah, this path of community connection is not without its pains because relational work is inherently difficult for human beings. And for those of us who are uncomfortable with conflict, I get it, it's hard, but this is about capacity building. That's why I talk about this concept of titration, just little bits at a time. And then you're going to look back and be like, whoa, that would have taken me down, but I'm actually totally fine. And I can
hmm
keep moving forward.
Yeah, noticing our growth. And I read that email that you sent and I
Oh,
loved it. And again, it's thanking the people who exclude us because what's the phrase? Rejection is redirection.
yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And what you were saying before around how I forget how you phrased it. If you are called to cultivate community, you are here to do that. If that's something that you feel so drawn to, it's challenging. It's hard to take on that role and to be the one who goes first, but you're here to do that. And I resonate with that so deeply because since I've traveled so much and so many different aspects of my life had led me to being very solo and I've experienced lots of loneliness
yeah.
within that. And it's also been a blessing. No regrets, but through that, my desire to cultivate connections and community has only deepened. And I've owned that that's a part of my purpose here. And I know that so deeply because of the loneliness that I've
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
We have to go through what we go through and feel what we feel in order to then own what we are meant to do in this world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get a lot of emails, especially when I live in California, and I was like sharing my California community, witchy life, and I would get people like, "You're so lucky. You're so lucky you live where that is. Where I live, people are catty, or where I live, rumors and gossip ruin a community. Where I live, and I understand there are some geographic places that are more oriented values-wise towards community than others. So I'm not going to say it's an even playing field. And I have worked with so many women. I have this program called Circle Craft where I support women in starting their own women's circles. I mean, I have these women who are in these super religious, pretty conservative communities doing the thing. And they're working through people ghosting them. They're working through people feeling jealous and starting text threads without them on it. These women are doing the work of being like, And it takes having a community that's hyping you. That's why I really, really emphasize because so many of us have friends all over, so many of us don't have just friends in one geographic location. Have that hype thread or that one or many friends who are like, you got this. But
Mm-hmm.
these women are just like, we're not doing this. And I'm going to keep letting you know who I am, which is I'm not doing this. You should really come to my women's circle. I think you'd really like it. So, yeah, I believe that's my whole thing is like, I believe we can all do it, especially where I live. It was an election year, like brutal, brutal. But, you know, it's part of my dharma, right? My life path to be like, we cannot just be lonely in our little homes. That's not serving any of us.
And again, it takes knowing yourself so well to be able to continue on the path of, no, I'm not going to bend my values or I'm not going to change what I want or my path in order to get people to like me or fit in. And I would love to know, how did you get to that for yourself? How did you get to the realization of, I want to create circles? I want to be intentional with how I am calling people in and hold my path and hold the space for people in this way.
Mm. Well, the origin story for me, because like our childhood and life informs so much, is I had experiences of circle and ritual early on through the Girl Scouts
Mm,
and through a sorority.
mm,
And they had negative aspects too, but there was an element of like a Girl Scout troop sitting in a circle and having rituals for moving up from brownies to juniors or daisies to brownies. And I remember being like, oh, I like this a lot. And then when I was in a sorority in college, that was my favorite part was when we would be in ritual and we'd sit in circle and we would share ourselves and there would be agreements around holding it as sacred. I was like, all right. But then I did my thing, which was not that. And then I was feeling lonely and I was doing like, drink wine and watch The Bachelor and talk shit about other women thing. And I was like, well, this isn't working. I tried all this stuff and had identified the ache and the pain, right? I could verbalize my loneliness and my dissatisfaction in friendship. I could recognize that I was part of the problem. And then I was just invited to a women's circle. And that feeling I had walking away from it, I've just never had anywhere else, which is a combination of elation, vulnerability hangover, sort of like a poignance, like a sort of weepy, sad, happy,
mm.
and inspiration. Like I want more, like a hunger. And that I've never felt anywhere else. And I can see it in my circles and retreats when women feel it. It is addicting. And I've been to many circles. They haven't all just been one way. We haven't all dressed the same way. We haven't all done this. I've done so many women's circles in various forms, whether they're called one or not. Now I chase that feeling because I think it holds a key for me and for all of us that have felt that feeling or want that feeling of, oh, this is a different way to be with each other. And what it unlocked for me was this is the way we used to be, and that there's wisdom in that.
That's something that I've been coming back to a lot, is there's something ancient here. There's
Yeah.
something in me that knows this way of being, whether that's circling or whether that's seasonal living or what, or rituals. There's something in me that's like, this is, I need to do this. This has happened before. And it's hard to put that into words if people haven't experienced it.
Yeah. And sometimes you sound a little weird.
I often sound a little weird.
I'm always sounding weird, girl. Yeah, right. But when you know, you know. My whole goal is to really take this technology or this tool of women's circles and sort of unbrand it for one kind of, I mean, even though I really love like woo, spiritual, I love all that stuff. Wheel of the Year, working with plants, altar creation. It feeds me. And I'm just like, we need to expand the circle brand or the circle aesthetic. And so I'm just like, yeah, this is an ancient thing that we've all done and our ancestors used to do. And some of our ancestors were burned for it. And we're lucky enough to live in a time where we won't be. And how do we get the women who might be like, whoa, to sit in there? So that's my focus right now is normalizing women's circles is just a thing we do. And it's no big deal. And it'll change your life casually.
That's actually a conversation I've been having recently in my business, is normalizing these things and making them
Yeah.
more every day, like intentional living, because I can be, I do love all the woo-woo witchy stuff as well. And I'm a very grounded person. I have a lot of friends and people in my life who want nothing to do with any of that. And yet I believe that everyone can benefit from more authentic connections and living intentionally and bringing more ritual into their life. And so trying to frame it in a way that is more approachable. And there's not one way to do all of these things. And that's another disservice that social media can do to us is it boxes everything in. It makes everything like you put this in that category. And I'm like, no, this is for everyone. But it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to make people comfortable with stepping outside their comfort zone.
Oh, yeah. It's a challenge. And also, we can't make people feel comfortable.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's going back to like, how are we changing ourselves? And for some people, being in their truest, witchiest, wooiest expression is going to meet the people that need that. And that's cool. I just think you and I have a similar calling here, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think it's being ourselves, our grounded, approachable, muggle part of ourselves, right? And then I think it's Trojan horse, frankly. Come on
Mhm.
in,
Mhm.
water's warm, and then, wow, look at this,
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just reflecting. I was looking at your website before we hit record, and you were like, I'm changing it. I remember I had a website. I've had many versions of my presentation of myself on the internet. And when I really, really got into women's circles and spirituality and sort of had that, oh, I had this online persona that was like, I had face paint and mud,
Mhm.
burning drums. It was sort of trendy at the time. And it was me in that moment. And it's just like not who I am now. There's something that's, I don't know, refined me. I think probably having a child, all this stuff where I still love the face paint. I was just at a wedding the other week where I was painted head to toe, but it's really about living the mission of I want to bring more people into this. And so if I've got to wear a cashmere sweater,
Mhm.
I will, but I'm burning some plants inside and I've got some oracle cards and I'm going to ask you to open your heart with me.
Oh, yeah. I feel very mirrored by a lot of what you're saying. And
Mm.
I I think you're also a manifest. I'm a manifesting generator in human design.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yes.
have
What's your authority?
I'm emotional authority,
Like my daughter. Beautiful.
but I also have a 5 in my profile. I'm a 5/1.
And I'm a
Um,
3/5.
yeah,
Yes.
I was looking, I always ask for everyone's birth info so I can look up their charts before. Um,
Beautiful service. Thank you for doing that.
and so I saw those connections and it comes through so much in everything you're saying. I think that a lot of us manifesting generators with 5 lines can be very misunderstood because we have so many different layers to who we are. I find that very challenging when navigating my business. I wasn't really anticipating talking about human design, and we don't have to go into that language around it, but how have you approached business with all the different layers of who you are?
Okay, first of all, I will always talk about human design because it's been so impactful on me and
Yeah.
has really helped me understand myself, particularly in the realm of work and expression.
Mm.
So happy to dive in with you and know it's of service to anyone listening. Well, first of all, the manifesting generator of it all is like really not making wrong the multi-passionate nature of who we are, the fact that we like to move fast when we're genuinely lit up, and when we don't have enough information, the decision isn't ready to be made yet. So for me, that's also very seasonal. I literally in the last week just felt the quickening of the earth. We are recording this February 4th, right? So in book time, generally, although it's frozen outside for me, but after 3 months of just like nothingness creatively, a spark was lit. And I knew enough about my human design to be like, go time, because who
Mhm.
knows how long it'll last. And I genuinely enjoy this feeling, right? So that's generators, manifesting generators. Follow the spark. If the spark goes out, you're done. That's okay, because it'll come again. So the 5 of it all, I've never talked about openly, and I love talking about it. So this is known
Me
as the
too.
heretic. It's pretty challenging at times and also extremely powerful, which I understand. I'd love to hear because I think you might understand more about it than I do or have a different perspective. Is one, I had to get used to receiving a lot of projections. This idea of being misunderstood because I was not cool with that. I felt like I had to make people understand me. I had the people pleasing part of me, the pain of rejection, of unbelonging, right? That all gets triggered when people project on you. And also jealousy comes in a lot for fives,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you're a manifesting generator who moves fast. So there's like cultural context there too. So I've had to do a lot of letting go of needing to be understood and trusting that as long as I am lit up and speaking from that channeled place, which I feel myself doing right now, of just like I could talk to you probably for 3 hours. I feel it between us. So I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm in my design, like I'm in my true design. And I have a don't give a fuck place of people who won't resonate have turned off by now. They've just changed the channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that took years and pain. I had clients come for me because they didn't understand. And also, I wasn't maybe revealing my full self because I was like fawning. I really had to work on my fawning. So, embracing my five has been, I mean, there's no choice but to embrace what you
Mm-hmm.
have, right? So, there was grief. And then now I know it's powerful. And I know what's really powerful is me saying, I mean, the truth about my experience. So, I teach through my life path. I teach through story, I teach through what's happening to me, I teach through what's worked and what didn't. A lot of me teaching about community is me sharing my story. Me teaching women's circles is very much me teaching my experience with women's circles and making peace with like that is valuable, as opposed to like I need to take more courses, I need to read more. I'm not, like I have a beautiful lineage of teachers and I can teach. I
Mm-hmm.
have something to teach. So I'm wondering what you think about that and what your experience as a five is.
Oh my God. This is one of my favorite things to talk about
Mhm.
because learning about this changed my life. One reason why I traveled so much and didn't want to be settled down or known so fully is because of the five line, because I knew that I could always sense the moment when the like there was always a shift between people projecting, putting me on a pedestal and seeing me in one way, and then when they started to
Oh, I
realize I
know.
wasn't exactly who they thought I was.
I
And
know.
so I would bounce. I'd be like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And that wasn't fair to anyone. And it also stopped me from fully accepting myself and being like, okay, if you're misunderstanding me or your perception of me is now starting to shift, you probably didn't know who I was to begin with. And that was often what it was because I was trying to be this people pleaser, perfectionist person. Like I wanted people to see me as perfect. And two, if now your projection is changing because you don't like who I truly am, then you don't like who I truly am.
Yeah.
And I had to be okay with that. I, I mean, I keep coming back to the word confidence, but that grounded confidence has been this anchor for me, just really accepting who I am and being okay with being misunderstood has
Mm.
such a huge part of that. And also being okay with people only seeing certain layers of who I am and knowing that very few people are going to see the totality of me and going to understand it and accept it. And that's okay. It's really forced me to know myself to my core and to not get caught up in how other people perceive me and who other people think I am. Because I can always check back in and be like, no, that's not who I am. And they can think what they will about me, but I know who I am and I know what my intentions are. And I'm showing up as authentic to them as I can. And the rest is out of my control.
I love how full circle we just came because remember at the beginning we were talking about like revealing ourselves online
Mhm.
and not feeling like we have to share anything else but what we're sharing in the moment. We don't owe people anything and sharing any layer of ourselves is a gift. I mean, this is true for not just people with five lines. I just love how we've come around to that. I am curious if there's anything you can attribute that grounded confidence to or that being okay with people misunderstanding you, like a practice, anything.
I mean, it's like my whole life now because I didn't have that for so long and because I struggled so much with really needing to I went through this phase of really isolating myself and being very private. I had no social media at all for years because I didn't want to be perceived and I didn't want people to misunderstand me. And I felt like I had to be very private and mysterious and all these things. And had my own journey of rock bottom moments and really not accepting myself and having times where I was very, very unwell. I went had an eating disorder and through my healing and recovery, I had to learn who I was and start to build in these rituals. So I can't say it's one practice, but it's been the journey of deciding that I'm going to know myself and I'm going to accept myself and I'm going to do
Mm.
whatever it takes to do that. And it's really also been following my energy with my human design. I didn't always know about human design, but like looking back on my path, I can see that my energy took me to yoga, it took me to herbalism, it took me to all these different travels, it took me to human design and journaling and all these different things that were kind of building on top of each other to allow me to build rituals and practices into my life that now create the foundation of who I am.
What I'm hearing, like the primary thing you did is decide that this is the new path for yourself and trust the things you were called to and yeah. I think some people we can get caught up in, well, how many rituals do I do and what tools do I do? And if I like do like a pranayama breath or whatever, like 10
Mhm.
times, will it take care of me? And I think a lot of it is literally the work starts at the toil, the work starts at the dissatisfaction, the pain, the suffering. And I think it almost ends at the deciding. It's
Mm.
different. This is my hypothesis.
No, and it's a good one. And that's why it's not what you're doing necessarily, it's how you're doing it and your
The
intention
intention.
behind it. And
Yeah.
that is why I'm so passionate about intentional living and really knowing yourself and deciding to create the life that you want to live and deciding to take the time to get to know yourself and to choose that. It really does take a choice.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for doing that work.
Thank you. I know you've done it too. What are some rituals that you've embraced in your life that have helped you connect to yourself and have that grounded confidence?
Oh, I used to have such a ritualistic life, and then I had a child,
Mm,
and it all got blown up, and I was so mad. I was like,
that's gonna be me.
it's it's lost.
Mm,
And now it's really micro ritual. And what I'm realizing is maybe in my ornate ritual designed life, which was beautiful, there was actually maybe a little bit of performance happening.
mm,
Whereas now I ain't got time for that. 3 out of 5 school mornings, I wake up early and I pull a card and I free write in my journal in front of a candle.
mm,
And that's deeply impactful. And it's probably like 15 to 20 minutes if we're in a luxurious time space. And I'm not luteal, but that's really special to me. Every time it happens, I'm like, this is luxurious. And then it's really for me an effort to slow down time and pause. I find I'm bringing ritual in with my family all the time by lighting a candle at every meal and then asking someone to blow it out. And it's really about, I love this concept of kairos versus chronos time
mm,
and how kairos is that feeling of time out of time. And so I'm like, okay, how can I infuse life with a little moment of kairos where we're suspended in a moment of presence with each other? Yeah. And I really do yearn for gorgeous experiences of rituals, like 2 hour long tea ceremonies and, walking the land and making a wreath. There's so many things I yearn for. Just before I got on this call, I was like, we're out of butter. I'm gonna make butter from scratch. Just like putting some like raw cream in a KitchenAid mixer. And I was watching the whisk take it from cream to whipped cream to butter and then finally releasing the buttermilk. And I was allowing it to sort of meditate and mesmerize me and free myself of any thought because I like to be pretty empty when I show up to calls like this. And then I was like, this seems like an ancient practice
Mm.
of churning butter. So these things just show up in my life, and I try to just meet them instead of being like, I got to go do something else. Like, oh, here's an opportunity.
Mm. Yeah, I talk a lot about the difference between ritual and routine. And again, I think it's a lot of it is around intention and your energy. And there's so much that we do in our day-to-day life that can become a ritual if we choose it to be, and if we decide to embrace that and be present. And I love the long rituals too. And I know it's going to be hard for me when I eventually have a kid, but
Yeah.
I also try to just bring in the small moments and make them ritualistic and make them sacred and be with my life. And
Yes.
I think that has the biggest impact.
Yeah, I love this term you just said, be with my life. I say receive my life in my cells. Receive my life. I think there's this weird experience of time in life. I mean, I'm on the cusp of turning 40, so I'm like, what is time?
Mm,
But I really think our interactions with technology, which I try to be neutral around, it is what it is. And I'm not a Luddite. I'm talking to you on the internet right now. But I do think, particularly social media and our phones, also the pandemic, have created a sense of not understanding that this is life happening now. For as long as we're privileged to breathe air in our lungs, this is the thing we've been waiting for. I guess what I'm trying to say with the technology of it all is sometimes we think it's coming or like then I'll kind of a feeling.
mm,
When I lose the weight, when I quit my job, when my kid goes to college, when I get pregnant, when I finally learn to eat right, whatever it is. And it's like, no, no, you're in it. This is the show. And of course, you can change anything as much as you can, actually, I should say. You can change as much as you can. But also, life is happening now. Can you receive it? Can you really receive it?
mm,
That's the ceremony we're in. And that brings up a lot for each of us. I've had some friends die recently, and there's nothing like the ceremony of the death of a loved one for you to remember that this is it. Don't miss it.
mm. Yeah, life is a ceremony. Oh, that gave me chills. I really love that. Okay, I have so many more questions. I want to keep talking to you. One thing I do want to ask you is what is something you wish people talked about more that you feel like not a lot of people talk about?
Oh, how addicted we actually all are to our phones.
Mm, I agree.
I feel like we hide it,
Mm,
you know. I'm addicted to my phone. It sucks. But
yeah.
yeah, that seems like something to talk about. And I wish we talked more about when things were hard, because I know that anytime things are hard for me, I have this conclusion that things aren't hard for other people. It's like a default thought of
Mm,
like something's wrong with me or they have it figured out. It's just like a funny thing I think that happens also from seeing everyone's highlights and having people not tell the truth and say, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? There's an artful way to tell the truth, but I just feel like it's a gift when someone tells me they're not okay. It's a gift when someone says, that happened to me too. I'm like, it did. Your child had a meltdown at the Nutcracker and you had to leave in the middle of the performance. Thank you so much for telling me that. It just creates intimacy. And that's what I want to feel. I want to feel connected in this human family.
mm. And that kind of brings us full circle as well, because that makes me think about how we have to be brave enough to be the ones to go first and to show people that it's okay to be real, to tell people we're having a hard time. And more often than not, if we're with the right people, that's met with more openness and more vulnerability and more connection and allows us to go deeper in our relationships. And sometimes we just need someone to crack open the door and then we can all walk in.
Yeah, it's okay to be brave. Tell my daughter that every day. You can be
Mm,
scared and you can be brave at the same time.
yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, living intuitively wild means living dedicated to your true, authentic self, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
Oh, I strive. I try. Sometimes I forget and then I
Mhm.
remember. And I'm so grateful for the moments I remember. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing it right now, talking to you, this relational experience, communicating with another being,
Mm-hmm.
saying what's real and true. I feel nourished by it. I feel my bright and well ancestors are like, yep, we've been trying to tell you that. Thanks
Mm-hmm.
for listening, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that too. Becca, thank you so much for being here. Please share where people can find you, any offerings you want to share, anything.
Yeah, thank you. You can find me at beccapiastrelli.com. You write some semblance of that. The internet finds me. I'm on Instagram sometimes. Right now I am on it, Becca
Mm.
Piastrelli. I have a podcast called Belonging. It's not the mega church. It's the one with like the nature wreath on it. You'll know. Um, yeah, and I'm just starting after a long winter's nap to publish episodes on that again. I wrote a book called Root and Ritual: Timeless Ways to Connect to Land, Lineage, Community, and the Self. I talk about all these themes and more, about how us as modern beings can feel a deeper sense of belonging to these areas, the land, who and what we come from, our ancestors, community, friendship, connection, and then ourselves and our bodies. And I'm a manifesting generator, so I do a lot of other things. I have a farm up here, Three Waters Farm in upstate New York. If you're ever in the Hudson area, I have a roadside farm stand where I
Mm.
sell organic chicken eggs.
Oh my God,
And
amazing.
you can look that up on Instagram, Three Waters Farm.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing all the depths and layers. And I'm just happy to know another person in the Hudson Valley.
Yes, thank you for reaching out to me. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.